So let's prep our kind of really the shaping of our bones so that you are landing on your knees on the blanket. And when you're here on that blanket support, you'll notice the angle of the hips. So when I lean forward and I bring the hands weight into my hands and knees pattern, we're going to first begin with articulating the motion of the spinal column. So if your knees feel like they have an unusual amount of pressure right now, you might work with this blanket. You might bring it so your knees are off the edge a little bit. It's a little different for everybody's knee, the cycle of sensations in our knees for practice. So with the hands open, making wide, firm prints with your palms and firming up the arms, and then start to articulate the lift of your lower belly, the rounding of your back, and coming into a rounded back, a cat pose. Feel the spine lifting between the blades and your brain weight lowering down. Feel that you control the brain weight through the spine, but it's really the pelvis action. So as you inhale, arch the back. And as you exhale, round the back. Sample moving the knees a little bit wider. And feel if that offers some direction to rooting your shape, rooting the hands, the knees, all those things that create balance for these shapes, right? Hands create balance even when they're in the air. Let's not take them off the floor yet. Okay, we'll do one more round of movement, communication through the spine. Inhale. Exhale one more time. Feel the arch and then feel the momentum into the spine rounding. Hands widen out even a little bit past your mat, and then lower down on your bolster and feel that connection once the weight is kind of sweeps off of the knee pressure. The arms are very toned. So it's an upward facing dog. I have my hands wide and out. It feels a little bit kind of gecko-like, right? You've got that reach of your arms and it feels like your neck is involved. So lower down your core, reach up into your chest muscles, but don't press your chest down with discomfort. Feel where your hands are still about 40% active. They're not forcing on the floor through the wrist any longer. And then reach your arms back besides your waist. Feel if you can actually lift up your pinkies, right? So the fingers spread open. And then as you bring your spine back forward, you'll take either your blanket or a block under your forehead. So you can choose the height and the texture under your forehead, but you're going to lower your forehead down so your mouth isn't really pushing into your bolster, so there's a little space. And then let your arms slide back so the palms are open towards the ceiling. So it does have an appearance of a back strengthening shape, but I want you to let your head relax. Feel the arms, palms open towards ceiling, head down. Relax the buttocks, and then bring your hands up to your back so the hands are touching around near the sacrum area, right above the buttocks, elbows wide. And breathe. Emphasize your breathing into that bolster, expanding in the core, massaging the belly organs. And of course, you'll notice the weight in your chest. So one thing I find helpful is if I separate the knees a little bit and I feel the actual oscillating motion of my breath The challenge here, however, is the head down. I'm lifting up so it's not so muffled, but the challenge is to stay with head down and experience that ripple of movement of the breath, and feel if you can get your hands to touch onto your back. Now for me, touching my back with my hands usually means the palms. That's kind of what I relate to touch. But try the knuckle side of the hands as if you're trying to push that part of the back downwards, and then lift up your head, lift up, and then lower your hands down, elbows in by the sides, insect arms, fingers open, and lift up throat. Carefully use the arms, firm them up to lift into that variation of up dog. Okay, now try the upward dog with the knees off the blanket. So toes under, lift up the knees. Right, doesn't mean you have to lift up your body off the bolster. That's kind of the easy route, isn't it? It's certainly a restorative zone. But can you feel the weight of your hips moving down? We didn't have a lot of hip weight a moment ago. It was a lot more in the chest. So hip weight down, arch to the spine. And then we come back to a table, and we're going to reach for the blanket, wherever your blanket is, and slide it under the bolster here. So it's under the front end of the bolster. We're going to pivot to our right hip now, and then lengthen that right arm, and take a setup for side sage. I want you to first feel the right thigh on the blanket, the right hip, the actual hip next to the bolster. So kind of scoot up to it. If this is completely contraindicated for your shoulder right now, then please take the modification right where the bolster is underneath the ribs horizontally. So you can flip it this way, and then you could take a block under your blanket, flatten it out so it's a little easier. Okay, so try these options first, then find your sand and place it on that outer left side. It could be hip, it could be waist. The block support or the ball might be something that you use on the inside of the left leg. Skirt ball has one of these balls, so it's nice to have that little bit of responsive surface to touch down with the leg. And soar the left arm over the side of your head. Maybe you're holding your left wrist with your right hand. It's very individual if your arm even goes all the way towards the right hand at all. Maybe it feels like the volume in the shoulder is too great a risk if the arm goes overhead. So maybe when it's straight up or back or down, it's the most optimal for your inner relaxation. So let the eyes rest. Find where that left arm could actually be, whether it's up, whether it's somewhat active, or it's behind your back. Okay, and we like to spend in that first phase of the class at least some moments of call and response for breath, feeling its path internally. And since this session is fairly interactive and has a pace to it, it's important at this kind of intermediate level to be responsible to regulate your breathing, to feel the pulse of it in your costals right now, the intercostals. And this is a restorative shape, right? So we can let the body weight rest into the props. Now let's add the sleeping sage, the twist to this for about 45 seconds. So you're gonna bring your left hand down and then twist your mid ribs right below the sternum as if I'm trying to kind of turn the ribs and place them down on the bolster and turn my head back to the left or to the right if you feel very neck worthy, right? If your neck is quite mobile to that experience and loves it. You can always turn your head the other way. And then let the weight of your body actually sink into the bolster. Give it a few moments. It might not be one you keep your sand on, right? You might take the sand off on this one. Feel the elbows lower down. Try to weight your arms in the pose. And feel the arms in almost a sphinx pose. So that means my elbows are down. Trying to get that left elbow down, even if it's a little bit besides my mat. Good. So feeling the rotation and that information through the in-breath, emptying on the out-breath. Now we'll come up and we're going to actually take Supta Baddha Konasana now. So we're going to shift onto our backs. So the blanket setup is a little funky for this, with the blanket under your seat. That's not a very positive way to do this pose. So I'm going to take the blanket up on top, so I have to kind of pivot my focus a little bit as out of the ordinary. This is the out of the ordinary sequence today. The not so ordinary. Okay, so I've turned facing towards the back. That's why it's kind of intermediate. So we've got our blocks under our thighs. If you want to buckle up your legs, your hip and your feet in cobbler shape, you're welcome to grab your belt and connect it and bring it overhead. You might be rather speedy with that sometimes. It's good to test yourself how rapid you can go in between slow motions. And then when I lower down, what I have is my blocks under my legs. They're close to my knees at this point. I have them kind of slid out. So my knees are practicing balance as much as my weight in my seat, okay? So this might feel like a pretty low height for you. Maybe you're used to a little bit more upright with your back. So consider this arm pattern. We're going to bring our body so we're back on the bolster. And then let's take our right arm across the chest and gently hold the elbow with your left hand, hold the right elbow and just persuade it to glide over to the left. Not to force and jam it, but feel how it glides. Deltoids gliding. And bring your arms overhead, hold your elbows. Kind of nice to follow the choreography for what it's worth. And make sure that the weight of your head is back on your blanket. And then hold your elbows, move the arms so they're straight over your chest. Bring the right hand to the left elbow and glide that deltoid sensation across. Now, when we do take the elbow crisscross overhead, it's a fairly individualized sense of depth, right? So when I hold my elbows now and I reach over my head, I am trying to get my armpits to lengthen. Right, so feel what that's like when you hold your elbows. Okay, then when you hold your hands together, reach overhead with both hands interlacing at the roots and turn the palms back. And then bring your arms open and down to the floor. So where do you feel the most armpit flow, like increasing and stimulating the flow of lymph? So That's the best for the immune system when we kind of knock on that door in class. So if you want to add your sand to your ribs, get a hold of it, place it just below the sternum. If you're comfortable without the sand, stay. Simply breathe and experience the touchdown of the arms. Notice that filling of the ribs. And the lift of the belly. Is there a part of the belly, even though it seems like a small piece of you, that pushes up, right, diaphragmatically? So noticing your breathing pulse in the diaphragm, and see if you can let it be very soft, slow, just comfortable. So not a harsh, like a snapping movement with the diaphragm and breathing, but slow and massaging. Oh, nice to play with how gentle you could be with yourself. Got to start with that. Maybe that's where it ends. Okay. Hopefully passed. But where we feel our connection, if you are using your belt, is kind of feel where it pushes, like your feet push a little forward into the belt. And that bound pressure, because the belt is binding the legs and the hips. So now I'm going to just witness that and then unbuckle and noticing if you feel any relative change with that inner grip. Ideally, that's a balancing part of the regimen, is you feel that bind and then you let go and that fresh fluid flows in. It's like you're steeping. Now we'll move any sand aside and feel how as you slide your blocks out, you're going to start to turn to side sage with the left hip down. So I'm going to try to keep my back pressure on the bolster. And then actually if I reach my left arm up and turn, I'm going to slide this blanket down. Doesn't have anything to do on my bolster. And sit onto that so you have a little bit more height, and then take on that side sage, left side down, lengthen and reach. Kind of feel, this is very close timing to our standing poses today, so feel what it's like when your body merges on ground in your sides. So let this be kind of a growing period for what's to come. That's a little uncertain, but even in your body, like how will you respond when your bones lift up and you don't have this cushion? So adapting is part of the practice, right? So I reach my arm over. I like that ball support where it may have gone under the inner right leg is great. Sand is good on the side, or no sand, you choose. And then feel that length in that right arm, opening, maybe down. And get the feel where there is motion and stillness, and its emphasis is on this side sheath of the body. It's kind of like this global sheath of fabric that moves from your armpit, back of the shoulders, and then it stretches straight down. But it is like a sheet on the muscles that kind of needs a little bit of opportunity to center and stay still for a few moments. See what occurs. Just let your eyes rest. Use sand if you like, not required. If it doesn't come to be, that's okay. It's just fine. turn, hands down, come into sleeping sage. Sand might be a distraction, and so the ball as well. So you might take those items out. You might use the ball still. And then when you turn, can you feel the actual pressure on the left hip bone? Feel the left knee still pulled up towards the bolster. And when you twist, we want to use this as weight bearing into that left hip. Okay, so as I lower down, I let my head turn right. I feel the weight of my body down to the bolster. Okay, now feel where your elbows are touching. If it's a little bit of drift from the floor, if it's actually down into the ground. And let's slide the hands back, okay? All these things that we've built up to this upright pattern is important, all of the little patterns. So move the bolster towards the side of your mat or just off to the side, as well as that blanket. Okay, that's blankets, the rolled up one. Now when you come around to the table, the blanket, the only remaining object on your mat, you might be moving it around a little bit. You might take it off of the mat for some of the standing shapes. The things you always need for standing shapes are basically your blocks, right? And your belt today. So you're going to put the blocks, let's put them over near the left side, kind of in the middle of your mat to the left. And then widen your hand print onto the space under the shoulders. And then get a feel when your hips reach back. Really reach back to your hips like a child's pose. Let the knees move a little farther apart. Let the toes either relax or stay hooked under. And feel the arms reaching. Okay, I want you to try to stretch forward in the arms and actually get the elbows on the floor, your forehead down. Okay, now the hands are going to slide together. Okay, so my palms are touching. Interlace your fingers so you're making this whole shape of support here. Seems kind of tripodish a little bit. Now when I lift up into all four pattern, I'm going to actually use my forearms to be the support right now. And as I lift up my hips and my knees off the ground, I'm trying to stretch into this forearm stand. And let my head maybe lightly touch the floor, but blend the strength through your arms. And then try to keep those heels reaching back and down. It's a little different than when your arms are straight. A little bit. Okay, now as I lower the knees down, I'm going to try the straight pattern. So arms straight, fingers wide, lift the knees, and separate your sitting bones as if they actually could. Right? So kind of get a feeling if I lift up my hips and I walk my feet out wide, right? So I actually could have some possibility the sitting bones are able to support the balance. And firm up the arms, firm up the legs. Let your head bow between the arms. Breathing and experience that fullness of strength and flexibility for one pose. Inverting downward dog, here we are. Breathe in. Empty the lungs. Walk your hands, or you might do a little assortment of hands and back, feet a little forward. Your blanket could be a little distraction, but I'm going to kind of push mine a little forward so it's still there for my practice. But when we do come back to our Uttanasana, feel if you can get a hold of your belt and grasp onto that belt behind your legs. So I'm holding my belt with my palms facing forwards, right? And as you get that belt right behind your calves, I want you to reach your arms back and stay with this with the arms straight back from your upper legs. It's not let's put the belt overhead thing, right? It's not swing it over your head. It's actually toning the arms. Okay, so I'm holding a belt. You don't have a Dynaband, use a firm belt, so there's not going to be any give to your belt. Feel the arms wake up a little bit more, unless your arms are already woke. Okay, feel that firmness. I want you to only keep it so it's straight back. It's not overhead or trying to get to the ceiling. It's one direction. Okay, now let go of the belt and then hold the back of your legs with your hands like you're trying to bring your chest towards them. It's up to you, your intensity. I'd rather have you find a honor a balance. So little micro bend in the knees. Let the weight of your head lower down as naturally as it can, not trying to force it. Feel your elbows behind you like you're hiding them behind your knees, like no one can see them. Secretly, you have elbows. Now, bring your arms forwards, hold your elbows in front of the legs, so the spine is spilling out of the back of the pelvis. Spine spillage. Try to tone up the legs. It's a tricky one. You can feel the thighs firm up, but to get the top of the thighs to lift is another world. And then as the brain is down, we're going to take some caution here as we get ready to come up. So I want you to let go of the elbows, of course, but get that belt. Sometimes holding something besides just getting your spine up and your brain up is helpful with the blood pressure because you're adding pressure, right? So I want you to grab the belt, bring your feet to a wide stance already, bend your knees, and then come up, hold your belt wider than shoulder width apart, come up, wherever you are, and then turn towards maybe your screen. Maybe that's your screen is this direction, but take a wide stance on your mat. So you're taking that width of your feet parallel, and then you open out the belt wide and find the width that allows you to feel the arms, the circulation of the arms kind of fill up. Not the chest so much, but the chest might get a mild stretch. Okay. Tip over to your left, tip your teapot. I'll go mirror you. Okay, tip over to your left so that right arm lifts up. And then change sides. So the feet widening, right? You might challenge yourself a little bit more with the width of the feet right here. Tipping over towards your right side. Okay, now as the arms move up, I'm going to keep the arms in this wide stance for a few more. Breathe. Okay, now let's turn the right foot open. So I'm going to turn the right foot to find a open lunge, a warrior pose. So my right foot is turned out, and as I look down towards the leg channel, my right foot is about in line with the arch of my left foot. And I want you to bend through that right knee. I know the arms and the belt, and there's possibility of some fatigue setting in with this. But you can always put the belt around your shoulders and let it hang too, and get it again. So feel when you grab that belt. Now can you turn towards the right leg all the way forward? My right foot is facing front, away from my knees. The toes are not turning in. Press through your back heel. Stretch up with the chest. Maybe the arms branch out. Breathe. Arm work. And then come back in center. Right? Triceps strengthening. Biceps. Okay. Lower the arms and the belt with the arms. Roll the shoulders back. Okay. Turn that right foot forward. And then as you turn the left foot out, Take up the belt, go real slow and kind as you bend your left knee. And then go turning to your left side. Keep it going. Find that you isolate your, this back leg sheath, right? This band that we're stretching all the way up into the hip. Feel that the belt is actually supportive of that, establishing that anchor. I suppose the belt for me feels like an anchor on its own, but we're going to try without it anyhow. So we'll see if it's better or worse. Okay. So put your belt aside, we don't need it. Stretch your arms up, feel if that's better, worse, preferred. Okay, and turn to the set. Open out the arms so you're turning maybe towards the screen. Open the chest. Left knee is bending, and we're gonna lean the left elbow down onto that left thigh. And I would encourage you to really feel the elbow or the forearm on the left leg as the right arm is up. Yeah, let it be simple. It doesn't have to go over your head, over towards the brain. It can stretch up towards the sky. Feel where the waist is working. Okay, now when you come up, open the arms, switch sides, right foot turns. So we may be in kind of different angles here. I'm not mirroring you on these exact poses. But when you bend through your right knee, bring your right elbow down, and I'm making it a little more restorative as far as the asking how far you lunge into it for now. So observe the channel of energy through that left side and observe when the arm is straight up towards the ceiling. To the basics. Now firm up legs, straighten up, turn so both feet are pivoting in, hands on hips, and take a forward fold. Reach to either your legs or to your blocks under your hands. So either way, right? I find the blocks are useful to feel my weight in my legs blend. So it doesn't feel so much depth in my ankles, but it spreads up to the back of the knees, it cools them off a bit, but it's up to you. If you prefer feeling your hands closer to your feet, inside the feet, crown of the head down, that's an option as well. So you're either going to take hands between the feet, crown of the head down, or you're going to have your hands forward on your blocks and your head down. So make it so it's head below heart, feeling the reach of the arms. Either way, I still want to feel my arms. Take a few more breaths. If it's feeling a little much for you with this inversion, you can always bend the knees. Come down for a child's pose and return when you're ready. Now, when you feel the legs kind of fill up with this matter of, blood flow change in the body, distribution, we're going to take the blocks in. We'll need them for this rhythm. So this kind of bone rhythm is to turn now your blocks and your waist to your right foot. You're going to pivot the right foot and then plant your blocks besides the foot, mid-height or low if you feel really mobile. And then the back heel, I'm going to pivot that heel as well. So the feet are both facing forwards, parallel. And noticing the bones of the back foot, how the pressure system is to stretch your calf. Okay, so I'm going to encourage you to work not necessarily in a hamstring forced position, but to get that block on the inside of the right foot so that you can access the direct relationship from your left shoulder down into your left hand on the block, and then twist to the right. So I'm going to go slow. Basic twist would be right hand back on the sacrum, and turn. Right? Turn the waist. Okay, I would keep it on the waist today, whether you want to bring your hand a little higher up on the back just to feel the breath in that space. But so we're not repeating some of the arm gestures over and over. We get a little bit more balance this way, perhaps. So feel the back heel stretching down. And now when you lower down that right hand, we're going to lower down the left knee to a blanket near you. So slide a blanket down under the left knee, bring the right knee up just above the ankle. Observe the balance here of the blocks right below the shoulders and start to aim the top of the left thigh to the floor. So you are working in the full angle, and kind of the left thigh is like a swoop. It's like you're swooping in on the quadricep, but it's a real it's got a good amount of barrier to it, doesn't it? The front of that whole muscle and the pieces of it do piece together with the hip flexor. The quadricep is a hip flexor, so I find that interesting because that's tendency maybe for some of you to have repetitive grippiness there or repetitive stress. Same thing. So notice if you can lower down your ribs, shoulders back, stay with the pattern of the lunge. Okay, now we're going to take upward facing dog with the blocks under the hand. So slide the right foot back, blocks go flat. Okay, and then as I steer my direction back forward with both hips motioning down evenly, lift up the crown of the head, feel the natural arch in your spine. Okay, now if your quads aren't really getting it, then emphasize here, relax the tailbone, lift up the heart. Now as you come back to table, round your back into cat, like you're actually trying to lift up your belly zone and lift up at the top of the thigh, like your hip flexor. So this whole area you're trying to lift up and up and up, kind of lifting through those flexors. It's a real tough one. Lots of inner core. Visualizing it can help too. So as I find the landing of my naturally arched spine, I center that right knee in. And then as I step forward with the left foot, I'm going to lift up my back knee and stretch the right heel towards the floor. Take the block under my right hand, pivot up to the second height. That's important, I find. So if you're in a pretty wide stance right now, that's up to you. But maybe stance out. Not stand out, stance out. So that your feet are in two different tracks, okay? And then when you do turn to your left with your left hand on the sacrum, you're going to feel that you're not going to fall right on over, which you still might feel. This is a bit of a tricky one to feel in the moment and blissful. Okay, the inside of that left foot is taking a stab at it, right? You're trying to keep the inside of that left foot pressing down. Yeah, I can feel my back calf. Definitely feeling a moment through the back lower leg. Okay, the left hip perhaps. Breathe. It only helps. We're still doing this. Good, good. So now when that left arm goes down, and keep very emphasizing in the core bones here. And then as I lower down the back knee, I'm going to stretch through the back knee, through the quads. Now I'm keeping my arms down in this version. Of course, there's versions when you're in a low lunge and you have the arms up, or you have the arms on the leg, the hands on the leg and lifting up the ribs. So there's all different waves of possibilities here when you try this on your own, of course. Now you're on your own too, but noticing you could try those things, okay? But I'm emphasizing right now this, the kind of the thickness of the quads, the back quad for now, preparing. Now this upper body is going to kind of go away in this next pose. It won't really be a part of your challenge. Maybe the wrists and so forth have moments. So when you do start to move your blocks out, okay, you're going to walk your left foot, toe heel it to the right side of your mat. You're going to go into pigeon, okay? So we're going to bring the left foot across, our left knee is open. I'm going to really tuck my right foot to the blanket quite a bit. Now, as I lower my left knee and stretch my right thigh back, this is a fairly low pigeon pose, right? It's not with a lot of support. So once you get the support of your bolster, you might want another blanket under your seat. So you can decide then. You can also stay with what you're offered and see if you can make peace with that. So I've got my bolster straight in front. I've already done my twist, so I'm going to take the bolster horizontal and focus on it under my elbows. Some of you've practiced with an angle on this pose and have mentioned you like it. So if you want to put the bolster to the right side of your mat and then angle your elbows on there, that might feel kind of nice in your hip. It's like kind of angling it different. But stabilize through the back, lower waist, just above the buttocks. Kind of feel how the region of motion leans into your sitting bones. Top of the back thigh heavy. Now as you come back to center, we'll keep it simple here. We're going to move our bolster back towards the front. And then when you're preparing to switch sides, pigeon sides, right? We're going to keep it real classical with that. You could push back to a down dog between the two poses, or you could swing the right leg forward like so and switch sides. So I take my right leg forward and I switch sides. Or if you want to go dog pose between, push back, take dog pose, feel the stretch evenness in your structure. Balance through the arms, firm up the legs, range of reach in your ribs, big rib reach, and then bring that right knee forward and sit back into pigeon pose and take the other side. So my bolster can go left, it can go forward, and I'm not using any sand on this version right now, although the sand option would really be limited right for your lower back. So see if you can let that back feel its roundedness. And also, where does the arch start in the spine? So hopefully the arch starts where your breathing is filling the rib cage. So noticing how the pulses of the breath. and the center of things through the back thigh. Bolster can be anywhere. Keep in mind the cycle of pacing the breath. The count is important, the length of the exhale. Now when you feel the weight in your arms, and then clearly in the hips and the leg, we'll stay seated. So we're going to move into this foundation part. So when you come around till your left leg spins forward and out, I would feel it's a brief piece of this work today, but you might want a second blanket underneath your seat so that it's a nice anchor for your seated poses, but it's up to you. It's really up to you. So I'm going to add it just because I think it's better for my knee. The angle of my knee moving out is a little bit more in proportion with my pelvis, so seems to fulfill that gap, even though I could use the ball under my knee. So I'm going to sit with my left leg out to about, it's kind of a 10 and 11-ish angle, how it feels out of my hip. So if I sit, I feel my heart center and how it feels like my spine is still able to have a natural arch. The leg shoots out to the left. So as the ball goes under that right leg, then I'm going to take the bolster in and get a sandbag on the left thigh too. Get one up on top, high up on the right thigh. Left thigh is kind of free. So when I move the bolster and tip it up, find a good match here with your bolster. So it's relatively stable, right? It's not too far out, so it's flimsy touchdown. So you want to feel the touch on the short end, and when you lean forward, progress so that you can do cat-cow. So this means if my bolster is really close to me, I can kind of prove my cat-cow a little better, right? When I move it farther out, it's a little challenging to prove its cat-cow spine, but it feels better for me managing the stress in my back. It feels like I can release it. So I would push out your bolster and find the range away from your legs that allows you to move your spine and feel if you can get out of your head with this one. Like I find that if I really let my spine do the walking here, do the movement, and the ribs start to work with the spine, since all of your vertebral column, right, it's attached to the ribs, it's all enmeshed, right? It's all stuck together. It's a big blob of stuff, right? But there's a lot of pieces to it. So feel the movements naturally lift and lower from the heart through the spine. So it actually feels kind of nourishing instead of still pose where you just kind of slam forward into the bolster. Feel movement. And then lower the bolster and put your foot on top of it, hopefully the one that's out to the side. And then take a turn to the left. So you've done this ritual of movement with the ribs. So when I turn left and I have my block up as high as I need it, middle or high, right hand holds the left knee, and then you turn to your left. And that spine momentum is kind of helpful to have had that movement and then twist. It's all warmed up. Not that you want to twist like an owl, but it's warmed up so there's some lubrication between the vertebrae, the discs, right, in the front of the vertebral column. So let your eyes close. A few more moments here. Feel if you can let the twist be gradual So it's like there's always more to come. It's like, oh yeah, I could go a little more, but no, I'm just going to kind of feel that I could go a little more and then just stay right where I'm in the center. Use that right arm strength. Nice. Yeah, feeling the spinal staircase. Okay, now we'll do a little bit of a arm shape, right? We're going to do Garudasana arms. So we did half of it earlier. So I think you can keep the block back there for this one. So as you bring your left arm forward over right, it's not really over my whole right arm, is it? It's as if the elbows meet and then my hands lift up and I intertwine the arms. Now the lower flesh of the arms is pretty important, and it's a generally not a very mobile area below your elbows. It usually pushes in your wrist most of the day. It's one line, right, of a bone. So when I lift up my arms, I want to keep the blood flow in the muscles above the elbows really quite nice and steady. So if you need to give yourself a bigger hug, scratch your nose. And then lift your arms so you feel like these muscles, even if it feels like they're kind of little muscles, you feel them plump up, okay? Because the lower bone from elbow to wrist, it's not like you're trying to basically build muscle there, because most of us are pretty tight there, right? If you get a massage, that area is usually, oh my gosh, it's not very flushed out, or fleshed out. Okay, now I lower my elbows kind of humbly to the heart. Give yourself a hug. Big, big reach around the shoulder blades. Hunker down here. Okay, and then lean forward. So the spine is in more of a lengthening shape here, because you kind of spread out the blades, so the spine is stretched into it. Okay, come back up. We're going to switch sides. I'm trying to keep it real symmetrical, so we'll go right to the second side. If you crave like doing a little of this leaning, try to save that for when we get on our back pretty soon. So bend the left knee in, place the ball or block under the knee, okay? And then we'll change so the sand goes left leg. And then when I move this rib cage, I might touch to it right now before I get on my bolster. Breathe. So I'm trying to fill up the ribs. Yeah, the natural pattern is it fills forwards, right, versus outwards, because we're pretty forward beings, right? We're like moving this direction, not going sideways very often. So feel the breath in the side. And now when you take the bolster and you lift and lower that spine in cat-cow, you might just breathe into the dive forward and feel the spine maybe find its rounded shape. And then feel the experience of that arch. Yeah, some of us stay a little more close to the arms when we do the cat-cow. We don't lift out of them. But you might be one that, for one of the sides, you get a little bit more interested in lifting up out of your body and emotion. So take a few more of these. If you go really slow and you're not interested in a lot of arching and spine waving, that's okay. It's for you. The practice ideally is for you. Well, self-care is community care, but it kind of starts with you. So when your back is in that reach, I'm going to take it easy here. Take a lean forward so you feel like it's a total reach. Okay? Now my challenge is trying to be bendy, or it's just kind of a natural motion, is to move forward and to kind of let my body weight sink in between the arms. So It takes another part to reach, get range, but not use the kind of, what would it be called? Hanging in the shoulders is something not to get into. So we're not going to hang the shoulders here. So when you lower the bolster down and you put your right foot on top, right now we take the turn to the right. So we're going to take the right hand back on that block and left hand to the right knee and simply replenish that rotation. Okay, so you're turning to your right, shoulder possibly a little bit back. It might be okay to try to get that to roll back. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because both shoulders are going back to lift the heart. The simplest way you can express a seated twist is really the most kind of respectful, qualitative twist, right? Just very slow. You're stirring it up a little bit in the belly, in the pelvic floor. Try to stay with a little bit of resistance in the groins. So you're not just kind of swinging the knee out, but the pelvic floor lead up is balanced, because we are going to go right to that next. So still feel a little bit of that muscle. And then move the right hand away. Cross it over the left arm in front, hook the elbows, intertwine the arms, lift them upwards. Now, the teachings on this shape are generally up, 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 up. You find the maximum lift, but not so far up that your shoulders are scrunching to your ears. So up, up, up might be up, a little bit more up, and that's almost too much. So find your bliss there with that. Where does the balance come? Maybe it's to hug yourself and lift up a little bit and then try it again. Yeah, that way I'm able to get my skin actually wrapped around my arm. If I take the hug, really wrap that skin and stretch your shoulder blades. It's a skin wrap. Perfect. So sense the elbows a little lower. And you could stay with this discipline if you'd rather stay with the actual asana. That's okay. Like just stay classic, that's fine. Or give yourself a hug. Reach the hands around to the shoulder blades. And get a feel when you hold the blades and the little pieces of them that you touch. If you kind of push your finger pads in, they generally feel, right? You have feeling around them that are kind of sensitive. So when we do prep, next pose we're going to be on our back. So I want you to, right now, really try to hold that space with your hands and stretch it apart, like you're stretching your shoulder blades, holding your hands on them, or simply holding them. Okay, slide the hands down and then take your sand aside. Okay, all things patterning here. We're going to turn our bolster across. And as we stretch out the legs, can you do this pattern with the legs in the V, the extended wide angle? And then when you lean forward, I want you to feel the hands on ground, flex the feet. Okay, so actively flex them. And if your knees are a little bit up, if you could kind of slip a finger under and you go, oh, they're a tiny bit up, great. Not hyperextending. And then feel the thighs tone like you're contracting the quadriceps. Okay. Now those are contracting pretty easily in this position. Okay. Now they're going to be mildly like that on our back. So when we come up, we reach to our blankets, push down, bring your knees up, your feet in, scoot off your blanket, and then first remove one of them. If you're going to do bridge pose without a blanket, I'm going to get those fringes back there. I'm going to push a little farther back. Make sure your bolster's on your mat, and then lower onto your back first. What's easy to get down for you is just slide onto your back. And then place your feet on top of the bolster, and you're going to use either a ball or a block between the knees. Either one, ball or block. Okay. So as I put my feet down, I want to be sure my bolster is close enough to me that my fingers could just barely touch it. Okay. So it would be a strain on your back if your bolster's too far in front. It would possibly could do a good straining event. So keep it close enough so that you have that control in your pelvis to strengthen your back. Squeeze the ball. We all have balls on this one, I think. So squeeze and release. Work on squeezing, releasing. Don't release the ball out. Squeeze and release. Keep the ball between the knees. Okay. Take that about 2 more times, so we do a total of 5 or 6 here. So this way the inner thigh is warmed up. Now I'm going to squeeze, keep the squeeze. Try to keep this so it's a leg feeling, it's a sensations of legs and the pelvic floor, but it's not tightening deep in the belly. So I want you to notice that the belly can be soft and soothed and not have anything to do as much with the leg pressure. So as I push down into my feet, keep the belly soft, lift up your hips just the right amount for you today and bring your arms overhead. Okay. Blanket doesn't have to be under your head. And lower your spine down. Arms go with the lowering of the back. Okay, so hopefully that felt comfortable in your spine. So start to carry yourself into lifting and lowering, drawbridge, observing the balance of the leg squeezing the ball when you come up, and then relax that grip when you pass the spine down. Okay, give a few more times, alternating, arching, and now we're scooping through the lower back and then lifting up the core and lengthening in the belly. So feel from the belly into the belly of the thighs, the quadriceps, front of the legs, and then lower down. Now we'll take a bridge pose with a block under the sacrum. So I want you to get a block. I want you to keep the ball or the block between the knees. Lift up your hips and take the block under the sacrum about mid-height if possible. If what's available for you is lower, that's fine. Take what's available for you. Blanket or no blanket under your head, you choose, but clear out the space a little bit here so your elbows can be wide and hands back in cactus. And then feeling that you can squeeze the ball and release. So keep the hips on the block, squeeze and release. A couple more times. Squeeze in. If it seems like you're losing that ball or it's kind of moving out, then you might need to bring your knees in and get it so it's attached on thigh material that actually has a visceral content. Okay, I find it right between the knees is just fine too. You might be surprised at how the bones have quite an effect into the adductors when they squeeze in. Okay, last time, promise, but keep the squeeze, try to keep it, and notice if anything is able to find sensational traction in the core. Relax your grip with the ball, that's key right now. Feel your feet on the bolster. Okay, take care to bring your knees up, feet down off the bolster, lift up the legs, and then take them both straight up. Okay, so if the ball is a little kind of wishy-washy attached, place it so it is. If the lower back is finding some curiosity with this, maintain that your feet are flexed, so you're rooting through the feet. One more moment here, a very brief time. We are going to do legs up the wall at the very end, so this is a transition shape out of this pose. Now when you let your feet relax, you can circle them. Then I get a lot of this when you walk around. You can't circle my feet when I'm standing on them. Go both directions. Find the satisfaction in the arch of the spine. And then as the knees clear to bend, you're going to remove the ball and then lower the feet down. Lift up your hips, slide the block out, lower the spine, and let's take a hip crossover shape. So we'll move our bolster to the right side of our mat and take the right leg, lower that down, let it go, and left leg crosses over to the bolster. Feel the soothing in the belly organs, but also the back organs, the kidneys. They get stuck back there. So if I get a sandbag on my exterior leg, this is kind of helpful for the traction, okay? If you can find your ball, you're going to place that at the sacrum. Kind of nice to add that in again, in a roll that's supporting, right? It's not such a, kind of semi-muscular roll, right? Muscle squeezing, it's now supportive. So we use the sand on the exterior leg. It could be towards the knee, mid, or hip part of the left leg. Send the arms open. Feel the waist centered. And let your head maybe roll left, maybe stay right in the middle. Feeling the breath enter. And with that repetition, starting to take care of your inner environment with the focus. I know the thought train might get hooked back in, right, when you get still. But see if you can experience breathing and the body feeling the breath. So feeling it move inside. You're worth the time for that. Now, when you motion your right leg to maybe a little micro bend, maybe the knee kind of jabs over to the bolster a tiny bit. Feel the looseness of the core muscles right now. Feel how they can be relaxed yet twisted. Feel like there's always something more you could do, but this is enough. It's like peacefulness. And as you start to move that sand off the exterior leg, we're going to keep it real balanced. So when you bring your knees into your chest, you're going to move the bolster to the left side. Take up the second side. And without a lot of fillers in between, of course, knees to chest is an obvious choice. But also notice if you're in a twisting second side series, like you still have one more side to go, let's take the bolster to the left, cross the right leg over, all those things. Add your sand, add the ball. Generally speaking, when you pull your knees in between twists, it shocks the sacrum a little bit, right? It's getting the direction of going across and assisting the movement of the pelvis and the spinal column. So you can do those knees in and those releasing positions after in completion, like the full depth of knees in. So just be a little cautious of how much you change the direction of the spines, what you're asking it to do. So I like the blanket under my head on these. Forgot. So if you haven't gotten there, maybe second side, you get to replenish. And we're going to follow this one up with our final legs up. So it's kind of a real busy sequence today, with stuff, but got most of it in. So when we have that crossover with the leg, you can notice kind of the information cycle in your spinal column, that you've moved the spine in these diverting paths, even if it's like a mental picture of a spine moving in two different pathways. Squeezing the knees in between, right, you can tell that the spine, it kind of gets jolted. So keep in mind, do your twists, right? Do gentle knees in if you need them between, or forward bends if you're doing standing poses in between. But don't do the full replenish till you're done with the twists. So as you twist, you feel your head maybe turning right. Feel the arms spacious. The belly movement with the breath. Kind of honor the wanderer of you. Honor your wanderer. Wherever you happen to be, internally, mentally, accepting that and what could change. Now encompassing these rotations with where things are quite complete, it's nice to find a pretty bold finishing touch on the practice. So what I'm going to offer you as a final pose that's intensive is legs up the wall, or if you want to do legs up in the middle without going to a wall space, that's okay. How you could fashion that would be to take the sand off, and you could place your bolster right now, right? Bring the knees in, feet down, slide the bolster under the back of the pelvis and kick the feet up with sand on the feet. But you can also take your bolster to a wall. It's probably nearby. There's probably a wall near you without too many things on it. That's the only challenge, isn't it? Is what's on the wall above your feet. As long as there's nothing too much on the sides, I'm going to ask you to take the bolster to the wall, or a blanket if you want to use one item that's a little smaller. And we're going to sit up against that and get a feel when you do roll up and swing the legs up. You want to get the seat really close to the wall. I just can't imagine if my seat doesn't get close to start, how I can get it closer. But there are some that are able to figure out ways. But once I get up to the wall and I feel my back muscles slightly elevated where my lower back was just arching and twisting, this is an in-between shape for coming out of that. So it's pretty intensive sequence, but we'll get there. We'll take our sand and we'll place it on our feet, and the knees are working to cool off too. So the back of my knees opening up, I have some space between the knee points, and anything you want to add to it, right? You could buckle up the legs if you feel so interested. You could get the blanket so it's perfectly in the center of the back of your head, stretching your occiput and noticing that occipital ridge is the top of your trapezius. So it really is an extension of that back muscle all the way up into your skull. So if I get my blanket kind of almost middle of my skull, it's a good one for my neck. There's two ways to do the neck, right? Blanket middle or roll the blanket under your neck, one or the other. Feel where the back is centered. Let your eyes rest in. And then as you go internally with the repetition of breathing, you feel where your arms want to experience the shape overhead or besides you. And rest in the moment of the balance through the hips to the back of the pelvis, reversing gravity's downward pull that we experience all day, right? Reverse the direction gravity flows through the organs. Rest your eyes, the bones around the eyes and the nose and your mouth. Now let this pose accumulate for a little longer in the nervous system to soothe, to lower the blood pressure, the heart rate. If you want to stay with this another minute or two past when I call out to come up to sit, that's okay. You might stay with this and get a little longer excursion upside down. That's so therapeutic for the immune system. So that's a good option too. It's okay to stay with this. And those that want to start to shift along, you're going to feel the place of the pelvis backing on the bolster. Feel that packed in. And then as I move my feet a little bit off the wall, now the sand is a bit of a, a little bit of an issue, right? To hold onto that weight, but use that weight as a accumulator, right, for the thigh circulation. So I bend the knees. I feel that accumulation of actual stability in my lower back. And then it might be the safest on this one to move it with your hands. So it's not pulling your back at all. And then feet in Baddha Konasana, knees out at the wall. If you're in the middle of the room, that's not going to happen, right? You would take your sand off and you start to bring your knees to your chest. Right here, we can do this one. So the hands are going to slide up a little bit to the mid inner thigh and actually try to press outwards. Don't be rather mechanical about it, right? You can feel the heel of your hands, you can feel your shoulders back and down, but it's a very specific direction, pressing the legs towards the wall, circulation dominant through the groin. Now as I loosen my pressure entirely and let my hands glide to my knees, hold them in, and then just a little bit of that knee bend, not too much force, just enough to roll to the side and come around and find a moment to sit. And you might sit to your feet, you might sit with your feet in front of you cross-legged, but take a moment here to unite our focus. Now feel the collective that centers on the practice beyond this room. And then bring the hands up, if possible, in front of your heart space. Bowing down to your heart center, surrender there. Feel the belly in motion and the mind in the belly. Inhale together. And with exhalations, bowing into the space behind your heart. And gratitude. Namaste. Thank you. Nice to have a kind of strange sequence, huh? That was a weird one.